About 3 years ago, we had a nice conversation with our finance guys and we said, well, when could I retire? And they said, you can do it today. And we said, oh, and that changes things when you realize this isn't some future potential thing. You could do this today. I built this space, which is in my garage, but it's a soundproof studio. And by the time I was done with software, I had a space and I could do full productions of songs. And for the last several years now, it's what I do all day, pretty much every day. It's been a delight.
Welcome to Second Verse, the podcast for indie artists finding their second act in music and the courage it takes to start again. I'm your host, Becky Boyland, singer-songwriter, StoryBrand certified brand messaging expert, and the founder of Attitude Creativity, where I help artists clarify their message and build a digital home for their music. Today's guest brings a fascinating balance of logic and heart. Chris Evans, not that Chris Evans, is an alt-indie rock artist, songwriter, and producer who started out in 80s rock bands, spent decades building a successful software career, and is now fully immersed in music under his artist name, AudioGust. Chris has released over 36 songs, collaborates across continents, and approaches songwriting with a refreshing blend of precision and play. His perspective on creative joy, finishing what you start, and releasing without perfectionism is exactly what many of us need to hear. Let's get into it. Welcome, Chris. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to start with, what's your origin story? When did you first fall in love with music? And what was your early life as a musician like?
I mean, I've been a music fan since as long as I could remember. My first concert my parents took me to was Elton John. I was 6 and it was a great show. It was really a long time ago. It's very early in Elton's career and he was really good then. Obviously, remembering that now, I'm a little older than 6, is a good indication that it was a really good show. But I started, I was always in choirs and things like that around age 13 or so. I think I saw The Kids Are All Right by The Who, which is sort of their history. And I saw Pete Townsend playing guitar and I thought, wow, that looks amazing. I want to do that. So I picked up a guitar and started playing it and learned that and started a band, and we were terrible, but we loved it. We wrote songs and got better. By the time that I was through high school, we were a pretty good band. Then I went off to college at the University of Michigan. While I was there, it was the strangest thing. The dorm that I was in had a student-run recording studio.
Wow.
So I had an opportunity throughout my entire time there to learn how to work in a recording studio with an 8-track reel-to-reel tape and lots of outboard gear because it wasn't digital back then. But I learned a ton from doing that. After college, I started a company funded by Domino's Pizza that was headquartered in Ann Arbor. Basically, we made podcasts, which sounds normal today, except it was 1988. So we were a little bit ahead of the game on that one. But if you listen to the things that we did, I mean, they were corporate communication things, how people could know what was going on in the company. They had people driving the big semi-trucks that deliver all the stuff to the stores. So the people who drove the trucks were on the road all the time. And this is how they would find out what was going on at the company. Once a month, they got this 90-minute long show on an audio cassette. It worked great there. And we did a few other types of shows with them and then went and said, oh, how can we bring this to other companies? We were a little bit early for the whole podcast thing by about a decade and a half. So that didn't quite work out. And at that point, I thought, this recording studio thing, this music thing, maybe now isn't the time, but this technology thing I like as well, because I'd taken some programming classes and things like that at the university. And I was always playing around with computers. So even when I was at Domino's, I was doing SQL database development just for them. I was like, well, what if we did this software thing? So my wife and I moved to Boston and worked at a router company doing tech support. While I was there, I learned C++ and worked at another company doing, applications and database things like that, and really enjoyed it, writing code and building applications and products for people. We shipped the first Java development environment on the Macintosh back in the day. The weird thing about it was that the company who made Java hadn't shipped on the Mac yet. So we actually beat them on that, which was kind of fun.
Wow.
Apple and Microsoft and those folks all like, who are these guys? Well, they both came calling. And I ended up at Microsoft working on Internet Explorers on the Mac and browsers in general, but then lots of other things over a period of the next 20 some odd years. And during that time, there were points where music would come back. I'd be in a band and we recorded an album and released an album on mp3.com. And, it was fun to do that. And then every once in a while, I would sort of check back in with what was going on in recording. Because even back when I was in Ann Arbor, before we went to Boston, I was writing songs and recording them, using one of these 4-track cassette recorders, which I used SMPTE on so I could sync it up so that I could have MIDI going through my computer. And it was this, really weird, complex system for something as sort of simple as it could be back then. I wrote a lot of instrumental type songs then, and it was a lot of fun. But then, during the software years, it was occasionally playing guitar, being in a band for a year or two, but then not, and then coming back again and checking on what was going on in recording. And, I got a copy of Logic Pro back when it was a separate boxed product and you had to buy the whole thing. Every few years, I would write a song or two and maybe go back and tweak some of the earlier ones, but not a lot. And then about 3 years ago, we had a nice conversation with our finance guys. And we said, well, when could I retire? And they said, you can do it today. And we said, oh, and that changes things when you realize this isn't some future potential thing. You could do this today. One of the things I had to think about was, okay, well, what do I want to do when I retire from software? Because I got hopefully a lot of time left, knock wood. So I built, in the year or so before then, I built this space, which is in my garage, but it's a soundproof studio so that I could be loud, which is one of the things that sort of kept me from doing a lot of recording previously, is I didn't have a place where I could go and be loud. And I'm sure one of the things about recording and writing songs is that if you're not the person doing it, going back over and over and over and over and over again at the same part of the song as you're tuning it and tweaking it is really annoying to everybody else. Doing it over headphones never quite worked for me either. So it was a challenge. But once I could build this space where I could be as loud as I needed to be, I don't need to be that loud, but louder than the rest of my family might want, or my neighbors. And I could also block out all of their noise. That was the game changer. And so started setting up the space. And by the time I was done with software, or at least corporate software, I had a space and I could do full productions of songs. And that was the key moment. And so I told everybody I was retiring to become a songwriter. And they're like, really? And I was also like, really? Well, it sounds good. But then I did. And for the last several years now, it's what I do all day, pretty much every day. It's been a delight.
That's incredible. And I love throughout your story how even though you had these different interests, you still kept coming back to recording and music while making a really great career in software. And I think that a lot of people might think that that's so strange that there can be so much of a crossover between developers and software writers and songwriters and musicians. It's not so strange to me because obviously that's my life too.
Yeah.
It just really does come together. And I think especially when you have the producer writer, because it just all makes sense. We want to play with all the toys and we want to build things with these little bits and assemble them into something great and amazing.
The funny thing about software and music is that they're really similar, right? In both cases, you're creating something that you can't touch, right? You can't touch an application. You can touch a floppy disk or something like that, but that's not applications. I said floppy disk. That aged me right there. You can touch a CD, arguably, but that's also not really what the music is. Again, I aged. Wow. Anyway,
I'm right there with you.
So creating music and creating software, you're creating something that's a concept and you're creating it in your mind. And then in both cases, you can use your Mac, at least in my case, to create them. And actually, in both cases, the funny thing is that I upload them to Apple in order to sell them because both the apps that I've built on the Apple platforms, as well as the music stuff that goes through, actually, funny thing, the same kind of tools in the back end. I wrote an app and I had an app in the App Store the day that it opened. The tools they told us to use in order to upload the app was called iTunes Connect. So it was the exact same software on the back end at Apple that developers use to upload their apps was the same stuff that the labels and the distributors use to upload their music into iTunes. So even at Apple, it's the same thing. It's a set of digital bits. But from the creation standpoint, I think it's a lot of the same skills as well, right? It's being able to sort of think about something that you're interested in that's fully creative and being able to sort of take that and iterate on it a lot and get it to a point where it sort of meets what you want it to be. And in both cases, there is never actually an end, right? I mean, we ship music or software because we hit a point where it's like, okay, I want to get this to people so they can enjoy it. but there's always more that you could do in an app. There's always more you could do in a song. And sort of knowing where this is the right point is important. And as you build those skills, a lot of them are the same. I know an awful lot of musicians through my time in software. And I think it's because they have that same feel, that same skill set. One really sort of does help with the other one.
I see it almost as a tangible, even though it is very intangible until it's done. And then you do have this way to interact with it. You can either listen to it or you have an interface when it comes to software. For me, it's almost a tangible thing in contrast to the intangibility of some of the other work I have done. It almost feels like a thing I've built as if it were with my own two hands. It is fascinating that so many of us weave in and out of these industries, and it makes perfect sense. It sounds far away until you realize how close it is. It's fascinating. And so now you have your recording studio and you're working under AudioGust, which is your artist name, your producer name. What kinds of projects are you doing? And are you doing primarily for your own artistry, or are you also doing other projects for folks?
A lot of both. So on the AudioGust front, first, I'm using the name AudioGust for those who maybe joined into this podcast thinking a different Chris Evans might be here, because an awful lot of us Chris Evanses. Obviously, there's the big Captain America actor, the radio guy in the UK. We're members of a little golf club up the street here on Whidbey Island, and there's another Chris Evans there. And when I first joined the Internet Explorer team for the Mac at Microsoft, which was like 30 people, there was another Chris Evans there. So I had to come up with a name that I could use for the artist stuff that was not used by somebody else. That's where the need for AudioGust for both my music and production. And so last year, I had a goal to release at least one song every month as a way of just doing it, right? In software, we talk about shipping regularly. And this is the same idea of getting good at writing quickly, but also producing completely. I play all the instruments on all of my stuff and sing. And I had some songs with some other folks singing them, but as well. But I do all the different parts. And so it was a great year to sort of get good at shipping and figuring out how do we ship it and how do we or release it and how do you track that and how do you market it and all of those things. So that was a big chunk of last year. But the other half of last year was doing a lot more co-writing and producing with other people. I work with a lot of people in the US and outside of the US, a lot of folks in the UK and in Europe, writing and recording songs with them. I've mixed some albums for some local folks here as well. But the thing that I really love is the songwriting and producing. All of the songs that I release to AudioGust, I kind of view them as almost business cards for what I do and can do as a songwriter and a producer. Here are the different types of things that I do naturally. Here's some work with some other people that sort of shows other skills in different genre directions, be it dream pop synth songs that I do with a woman named Carmel, who's in Poland, who's amazing. And we have her second song coming out soon. We've got a couple more of them, almost done. I work with some folks up in Canada writing a whole bunch of country type songs and a bunch of folks in the UK. It's been great learning with them because we're all in the same boat figuring this out. And the things that you can pick up by doing collaborative work, really help me grow and help me learn some different things and figure out what it's like to work with other people in all elements of production as well as in writing. And it's fun to see how each one's a little bit different.
Working with other people, you get the benefit of the experiences that they've had, as well as their genre tastes and interests. It really does start to stretch things. And then, of course, there's that community that is built around that. There are so many amazing artists out there that are doing like we're doing at this point in our lives, trying to just do something new and fresh. And there's also plenty of audience for all that we have out there. We just need to find them and help them find us.
Yeah, that is the trick, isn't it? Is finding your audience. And the thing that's, I think, was really useful for me to figure out is that no matter what you do, no matter what style of music you create, if it's something that you actually love when you create it, that audience is out there. It could be the weirdest thing in the world. And it might be hard to find that audience because, they may not be huge, but they're out there. If you really love the music you created, then other people who have a similar music experience developed through a lifetime of hearing music at every, good and bad moment in your life, all of that sort of builds up this ID in each person's head of what it is they love and why they love it. And the odds that any particular person likes a given song are actually really low. Because if you think about how many different styles of music there are and how many different cultures, the vast majority of the music I know is very Western focused. So US and Canada and UK and Australia and things like that. But there's so much French music, Russian music, Chinese music, and every different culture has their entire history as well as their popular music. And so the odds of them liking, anybody in the world in particular, liking what I do are arguably small because they have interests that I've never even heard of or thought about. But they're there in probably all of those places. And just looking at my numbers on Spotify, which I do every single day, is fascinating. Why is that song popular in Portugal?
Yeah, I know, right?
It's neat to know those things, right? Or you see, some radio station in Argentina is playing some of my songs. And then I start seeing Shazams from Argentina. And I'm like, that's the coolest thing in the world. I get a email every week from Apple Music and it tells me how many Shazams there are. And usually the number's pretty dang small. But every time I get one, it sort of tells me also where were the cities that people Shazammed me. And it also tells me where was my radio airplay that week. And you can see this great correlation of if you're getting some play in some city, then people start Shazamming it as well. But just to me, that moment of someone Shazammed it is that's this huge step, right? Of a person not only heard the music, but then decided, wait, what is this? I'm interested in this enough. Actually take their phone out of their pocket and push a button and hold it up, which isn't hard, but it's that's the level of interest. Something that I did provoked physical action by somebody to be curious about it. And that's huge.
They're self-qualifying and saying, I want to know more. I want to hear this again. Maybe I want to find out what else they have available that I can listen to. And I think the really huge step for us as artists is to go past the point where we think that the song is our product. And the reality is we are the product. They want to get to know us, build that community with us, and also then be kind of led by us towards something that they're passionate about. Once we sort of cross over to that point of, no, I am offering something that is beyond just sonic. And that obviously is a huge part of it. There needs to be a coalescing around that art. But beyond that, they want to know more and we have more to offer. That's the part where the artist can find community and begin to brand and market themselves in a way that isn't just about numbers, but about outcomes and doesn't feel unnatural because it really is community building at its core.
Yeah. And a lot of the community, you rarely actually know who the people are. You don't get their stories. It's sort of a one-way street in an awful lot of the cases. So it gets a little lonely writing songs. And that, to me, gets back to you've got to write things that you love. Trying to write music that somebody else will love, but it's not the thing that you love. How do you write something that someone else will love if it's not something that you love? How would you know? I was talking before about how do you know when you're done with the song? If it's something you have a personal connection to, then you can tell when you're hitting that emotional or message or groove or whatever it is you're going for. You can tell when you do that if you're writing to satisfy your own love of that song. If you're trying to write something to somebody else's likes, be it to a sync brief for, the charts, or I'm trying to write for some artist who I don't actually know and they're not part of the process, it's very difficult, nearly impossible, I would argue. But the problem is that you can't tell when you're done. You can't tell when you get it right or get it wrong if you're not judging by, do you love it? But if you're writing something to really satisfy your own, I want this song, I want to listen to this song a lot, then you can do that, right? Then it's a different problem of finding your audience rather than writing something that someone will love. But you know that if you find that audience, because if you truly do love it, they probably will too. And then it becomes, I think, a process of doing it a lot. The music industry is very much a numbers game. I mean, there's not a single record, even of all the ones that have been streamed billions of times, that was enough. It's great and it's wonderful when you have that moment. Then even for those folks, it's what's your next one? If you can get to the point where you keep doing it, not because someone's yelling at you saying you need your next song, but because you're like, this is just what I do. I love the creative process. I love those moments when a song comes to you and you're like, where did this come from? And I also love, though it's a little more challenging, the times where that doesn't happen and you're like just, banging your head over this last line of the chorus that is just not working yet. But when it's there, you're like, okay, it's there.
We'll be back with more after this break. Second Verse is sponsored by Attitude Creativity. Many indie music artists don't have a website that grows their audience and reflects who they are, so they get lost in the noise of streaming. Marketing and brand messaging with Attitude Creativity helps boost your brand and build a site that hits all the right notes. You want to be an artist who stands out from the crowd, and to do that, you need your music to be heard. If your website doesn't reflect who you are or make an impact, you feel like a singer who's been handed a pair of drumsticks instead of a mic. You deserve a website and brand messaging you can be proud of, and that doesn't take time away from your music. As an artist like you, I understand how overwhelming websites and marketing can be. And that's why, putting on my other creative hat, I put my decades of marketing and development experience to work for you. You'll no longer have to apologize for your website. You'll look and feel like a professional with a custom story branded website you can be proud of. And right now, you can get a head start with my free downloadable EPK blueprint and start building your electronic press kit to promote your music. Head to attitudecreativity.com/blueprint to get your copy. That's Attitude, ATTITUDE, creativity.com/blueprint. Second Verse is brought to you by Singing Straw. Oh, you caught me in the middle of a vocal warm-up. This is one of my favorite ways to wake up my vocal cords before a singing session or even a nice long conversation for the Second Verse podcast. It's the Singing Straw, a simple but powerful tool for straw phonation, a vocal technique that promotes healthy vocal cord closure in a gentle but mighty way to increase range and identify areas to work on. For me, it was key to regaining my voice after vocal cord paralysis. But you don't have to wait until a vocal injury to use it. In fact, I recommend that you don't. Make the Singing Straw part of your daily routine, and you'll be amazed what your voice can do. Check it out at secondversepod.com/singing straw. I think that's a really great insight about finishing and not being able to know when it actually is doing the thing that it's supposed to do if you don't love it. And if you don't love what you're doing when it comes to music, this is going to be a very, very hard business to be in. You do it because you love it, not because it promises any kind of immediate fame or even the ability to support yourself. While it can do those things, the pathway to get there has to be for the love of the music. When I finally realized that not everybody loves music the way that I do, it was both a surprising aha moment because it should have been obvious, but I was like, what do you mean not everybody wants to do this? But it also made me realize why not everybody does do it and why I can't stay away from it because of the love of it. There is so much authenticity that comes from just loving what you have created. And then that continues to pass its way down to each new song and makes it even better and a greater part of your story, while at the same time letting you let go of it a little bit. Each one is not so important unto itself that you can't just let it go out into the world, which is a great part about releasing regularly so that you're always moving forward, always building your catalog, and never overly precious about each song as much as you love them.
Yeah, that's a really important point too. I mean, there's so many people that I've heard about or talked to that are like, oh, I'm working on this song. I just want to get this song perfect. Why don't you write some more songs? No, I want to finish this one. I'm like, no. Then do the next one and then do the next one. No song is worth getting stuck on. If you are stuck on one, that's the perfect reason to go do another one. Maybe in doing the second one, the thing will come to you. You need to put it down and go do some more. But it's like exercising in a way, right? You get better at figuring out melodies. You get better at writing lyrics the more you do it. I heard someone say that if you're ever really in a writer's block and you can't write anything, they said, write 10 bad songs. Right? Yeah. Your goal is not to write 10 great songs. Your goal is to write 10 really bad songs. Once you write 7 or 8 bad songs, your next one is going to be not bad. It's just going to come out because you're going to have done all this stuff. And then suddenly be like, oops, I can't even write 10 bad songs, but then a good one comes out. But I'm happy. It's the doing it that is what makes it better. It's how you get better at it. As long as there's joy in it, then it's all good. It's all upside. I really feel for the folks who become incredibly successful early on, because they probably very early on have very important people coming at them and putting the pressure on them of now you have to go write a great song. Don't write a bad song. You have to write a great song. And you can't write the great songs without writing the bad songs or the medium songs, right? And there's probably not that many bad songs, because you get to certain points like, oh, this song's just bad. You don't finish it because it's like, oh, this one's just dumb. I do that a lot. Then you get to the medium songs, right? That have something good in them and you like them. And I'm like, finish those. That's great, because you learn something from every one of those. If you really love good chunks of it, it may not become a super smash hit, but if you love it, someone else is going to love it too.
Yeah. And when you first start, there's that feeling of, oh, I've only got 2-3 songs or whatever it is. But when you continue in this process, there comes a point when you look back at the catalog and realize, oh, wow, I have a lot more music than I thought I had. You do have more to offer those opportunities, but you also have markers in your growth and development and the things that you've learned along the way, so that each new one has this benefit of what's come before it. And I'm absolutely seeing that in my productions as well. It's fun sometimes to sit back and say, oh, this is why I didn't do this over here, because I didn't know that yet. But now that I do, it's making a dramatic difference in my production.
I love going back and listening to old stuff. Some of the songs, I'm like, I still love this song. Now, if I was mixing it today, I would make some changes. When I started working with the Songwriting Academy in the UK, I had just finished my first album. So I was like, oh, I could hold on to this and see all the things I learned and make these songs better. Or, and this is what I did, release it and say, okay, that album is the end point, the marker of the end of that era, right? Of me just all by myself with nobody else around. Then I know that now with the folks that I met there and the mentors and songwriters, I was going to grow in some direction. Rather than try to keep working on those songs, they were complete. I would put that out, and that would be that moment. And the next chunk would show some growth. I go back and listen to that first album now. None of those songs have hit big numbers on Spotify, but a few of them, like this song, jams. And I've got one song that's, I'm trying very hard to sort of do this pop song thing. And it's like, that's not who I was at the time, or particularly am at the moment. I was sort of trying to do a thing. And I like some of the things in there, but it doesn't quite fit. I'm still glad that I did that. And I learned what some elements of some pop songs aren't in doing that process. And then I look at the things I've released since then. There's a number of songs that I did with folks that I still see as that was an inflection point for me, right? I wrote this, I did it this way, or I collaborated with this person. And, you know, it may not measure up to what I would do today, but all of them are things that I liked enough to do the effort of releasing them and finishing them and getting them out there. And so every one of these things is a step along the way. In fact, I'm just finishing up my second album now. And one of the songs, actually, I started with an idea over 2 years ago and recorded sort of the very first part of the track then. I didn't know what the lyrics were yet, but I just had this idea about a band that starts off being in a garage and not being a good band yet, but just having fun. And it follows them through growth stages in their career, from being in the garage to playing bars to playing big locations. The idea was the production of the song would follow them through those different things and shift during that one song from one spot to another. And when I started doing that, I don't think that I had the skills yet to be able to do that. But the idea was there. And parts of it, you know, were good, and parts of it were like, but that song is on my new album because I figured out what I wanted to say in that song and the additional parts I needed in production skills of how to sort of make that happen.
That is such a cool idea. I really love that. Can't wait to hear that one, because I love when you can build on stories like that, and the way that you've processed through how you're going to do that. I can see the picture of it, even from you sharing what it's about. So that's so exciting. I love that.
One of the funny things about that song is that I had to wait for an album to release it. I couldn't release it as a single because it starts out noisy. So they start playing the song and they screw it up and they stop. They're like, wait a minute, I got to start over again. Every time I hear it, cracks me up. I think it's hilarious. But on Spotify, you know, if you're going to skip in 15 seconds, you're going to skip this song.
Right. It's going to end up on Fallon's do not listen list.
If you're listening through an album, you're committed to the same person for a while and seeing what they have to offer in this context. And it's part of the overall story arc of this album. And that's an important element of what the story arc is. But you need the patience to get past that. It's not long, honestly. We get to the hook pretty quickly. The hook is, I'm singing this song with my whole heart to the lawnmower is the first chorus. The second chorus is to the bartender. And the third one is to the whole world. If you were on some miscellaneous playlist on Spotify, that it would probably get skipped a lot.
Right. Because an album really is a different kind of relationship. And you've earned the trust that they'll stick with you to hear through what you're trying to say before they critique it. By that point, they're invested enough that you can get through that whole story. So yeah, that's why the album and the single are still both really important parts of the whole process. I have all these memories of listening through certain albums over and over, and the ones that you really are committed to. And they always will have this very strange deep cut that sometimes is the best song on the album, but would never make it as a release.
Right. And some songs, yeah, it takes listening to it 4 or 5 times. And I don't write party songs. I don't write, ooh, ooh on the dance floor kind of things like that. Right. I like to say something, usually multiple things, and to be able to sort of have that sort of, you can listen to it the first time and go, okay, I see what this is about. And then you listen to it the 4th or 5th time, you're like, no, wait, I think it's about something different. And sometimes that's intentional that I start out with. And sometimes the song comes out that way. I don't know it's about the other thing until a little bit later as well, which when that happens is actually kind of delightful. It's sometimes surprising too. I mean, I wrote a song that's out now called Pick Me Up. The hook is, I came in for a little pick me up and I just can't put you down. And I thought, oh, here's a person, down in their luck, going to a bar, needs a drink and or whatever. And I wrote the whole thing and was playing it for my wife. And she said, the Italian word for pick me up is tiramisu. That's what that means. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's because it's the coffee flavor in there that, sort of the pick me up. And then I looked at the song and I said, oh my God, this song is a love song to coffee, actually. And there was like 1 or 2 little lines. I'm like, okay, that one isn't. But if I change the line in this way, it still has potentially that meaning of, oh, you came in and liked the server or somebody in this restaurant. But you could also then go, no, wait, it is the coffee that this person actually is. I really like it when a lyric can have both of those be true. Like the song Closing Time, that arguably is about a bar closing and everybody should go home right now. But it's also about having a kid. And those are 2 very different. But it is literally about both of those things. I really like it when someone can create something that does both of those things. Sometimes when I was getting feedback on songs, people were like, this song is unclear what this thing is about. And I'm like, it's about this. They're like, people have to know that immediately. And I'm like, I don't agree with that. But in certain genres, in certain cases, that's probably true. I just don't buy it personally. So I will always sort of try to make sure that when I'm saying things, there is more to it. I really like it when songs have more for you later as well, right? It's not just you listen to once, you've gotten everything that you're going to get from the song. And by the way, there's nothing at all wrong with songs that do that. I just don't like writing them as much. When I'm trying to write lyrics, it's often something along those lines of how could I say this in a way that means this, but ultimately could also be this other thing. And sometimes I get myself in trouble with that too, where I just like write myself in a corner where in the end, the song is almost about nothing. Okay. And those are the ones that don't quite where. And people give me that feedback too. And I go and sort of, try to clean those things up. That's the interesting thing of how do you say something and how much are you going to count on people coming back in order to get the rest of it?
I really agree with you too on you don't always have to give away every last little detail when you are writing a song and explain everything so much, because I think the most important part is if you're creating an image and a path for the listener and they can fill in the rest. Not to say that sometimes they can't be very specific, especially if it's truly a cohesive story, but I do tend to write more that way. But one of my most recent singles, I intentionally made it ambiguous, and it can be very clearly seen in 2 totally different stories. The fact that they're not clarified enough means this really could be any story. People seem to love that about it. I also did a collaborative write last year where only the 3 of us who wrote this particular song know the story. Because the story, if you don't know the story and if you weren't there, you will never, ever figure the story out from the song. And the song is great. At least we think so.
Yeah, I love those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's so fun because you can figure out the story on your own and fill in the blanks, but there's still a very clear path that something is happening, and then you can interpret it according to whatever you need to feel in the moment. And I think that that's a really great service that we can give as songwriters to listeners, because they're looking for a framework for their feelings, especially if we do write very emotive types of music. So it just gives them an opportunity to create the picture and fill in the blanks so that it becomes very personal to them. And I think that's totally great. But at the same time, I also know that there are songs that I grew up with that I love, probably because it's got a melody or a rhythm that I really love. The lyrics have nothing to do with my life, but I'll sing them at the top of my lungs
Yep.
because it has become embedded in my story. And so it can be both ways. The song doesn't have to have anything to do with me, or it can be something that I can craft as a listener, almost like a collaborator with that artist. And likewise, that's what I can offer them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so much of songwriting is storytelling. We only have a few minutes, so we can either tell a very tiny story completely in that time, or we can tell part of a larger story, or we can tell, it's like you're getting a peek into a story. I like listening, there's a number of artists that listening to their songs is almost like you're sort of overhearing part of a conversation as you go by them.
Yeah.
And you're like, what were they talking about? What was the rest of that story? And you'll never know, right? They literally were talking through an open car window and the next car over when the light changed and you had to go. And it's like, I'm never going to know who they are. But what was that they just said? And by the way, whenever you hear those things, you write them down because they may be useful at some point.
I think what you just said is in my head. I'm like, oh, that's a song.
Yeah. But, being able to give those little moments, there are songs until we put them out there. And at that point, we experience them like everybody else, right? We are fans of the things that we put out once they're out there because you can't do anything more about it. You're not the creator anymore. You're the listener again. And they're in the same boat. Once it's out there, it doesn't matter what you intended. It's how it lands with the folks who listen to it. And part of the reason I like being able to have more flexibility in the interpretation is that it lets people put some more of their own life in there that I don't know. So I can't write it in a way that's going to fit in with what their life is when I have no idea who they are or what their story is. But I can write it in a way that leaves space for additional interpretation. And there's enough mood or enough of the story that's there that puts you in the right place, at least for the person who does need it. And if the people don't, it's just not for them. And that's okay. I mean, I love a good emo song. I also love a really good angry woman song. Both of those are just, I love writing with people on those, and I love just listening to them. And a lot of songs that I write are sort of from that emo perspective. That's not actually my lived life, right? A couple songs in the new album, they're like, that's not actually me. But putting myself in those shoes, empathizing and trying to get myself into, well, if this was them, how would they feel about that? And what would they say? And why might they leave a person who's trying to just help them? It's because the pain they feel is the only thing they know. And so if you're trying to solve that, I've got this song called I Like Falling Down, which is on the new album. It's that person, right? They're leaving a person behind who was literally just trying to help them. They're just trying to be nice about how they dump them because it's like, I know what you're trying to do, but this is all I know. To fix this would be to sort of, as the line says, kill the only me I've ever known. It's not that they like the pain, but it is their life. For a person who's trying to tell them they can't do that anymore, or it's not okay, or they're not allowed to do that, it's like, I don't know anything else. You can't take this from me.
Yeah.
Even though it makes me miserable and would make you miserable, it's my life. It's what I know. And it's everything I've done. It's really nice to be able to put yourself into that position and sort of become that person in a way without having to always be that person. But it's so ripe for emotional connection. And then I'm sure there are people out there who they're going to be like, how did you know my story?
Are you listening in on my thoughts?
Yeah. Not. I did work on the internet web browser. It's a great way of telling stories and of trying to say things that people haven't already said.
And you have a really cool one-liner to describe your music. Hooky anthems for disenchanted optimists.
Yes.
Well, it was funny because it made me think about what mine would be. And mine would be cinematic anthems for realistic dreamers.
Okay, yeah. It's just the other side of the person's brain.
Exactly, yeah. Because I still want people to dream, but at the same time, the dose of realism is very helpful and very on brand.
Yeah. And I've always been very optimistic, but in a way it's okay, we can fix this, right? It's a software thing, it's a music thing, it's a life thing. That's okay, we'll fix this. Folks in my songs never give up. They don't always get there. But there's always maybe if I change this, what am I doing a little bit differently about it? I just love that element, right? That things aren't great, but they're also not over. So what do you do then? It's almost a formula for an AudioGust song in a way. It sucks. This hurts. Some big moment about that. And then a bridge of, but maybe if I, and then a chorus that shifts just ever so slightly. Wait, this thing you said before, now it means this other thing that's now slightly optimistic. How'd that happen? There's my formula for an awful lot of the stuff that I've done. But I love that idea. My daughter, on my 50th birthday, wrote a little description for me. It was very sweet. And I think she used the phrase relentless optimist. Like, even when it gets worse, it's like, keep going. There's plenty of things going on these days in the world that I'm like, I don't know how this gets better, but it's probably got to. So what are we going to do about it? Or what are we going to say about it? And if it's, you can't give up, until there's nothing left.
Yeah. And really, as I heard you describe all that, I realized that my realistic dreamer really is the disenchanted optimist. And it does come back around because you have to face what's actually happening so that you can then take that action and go forward. That's just a great life lesson. It's definitely a lesson for artists because we're always having to figure out how to take the way that we operate and make that happen in the world and make it work. There is not the option to just not do it and still be a complete person, still be a happy and whole person. Also, it's denying other people the opportunity to participate in what we're doing, to receive what we have to offer. So that's just a non-starter.
Yeah. Well, and this sort of gets back to the second verse. Yes. When I talk to people who are still in corporate software and are thinking about retiring, the thing I say is, what are you going to do? Like, what do you want to do when you do that? For some people, the answer might be, I'm going to sit around and play video games, or I'm going to go play golf, or I'm going to play. But for me, not waiting until I was full retirement age, there's lots of time. I can't just sit around and play video games. I want to have something to do. It's kind of fun. It's a very Western thing. Maybe it's even a very American thing of the, when you meet a person, it's like, hi, what's your name? And then the second question is, what do you do? Like, that defines really who they are, their name and what they do. What's their job? I know a lot of very wonderful people who are like, I do not accept that, those two questions, which is totally fair. And I try to balance that myself. But it is sort of the way that we have created some value around people. I think it's not healthy, but it's what we do. And so it's being able to understand, what do you want your time to be spent on? Volunteer work, or walking my dog, or going on hikes, or riding my bike, or any of those are perfectly good answers. They're fantastic answers. My wife does volunteer work for the Red Cross for disaster relief, which is amazing work. But if you're going to stop doing something, finishing a first verse, or even a seventh verse, and you're going for your eighth, knowing what's next really helps with that transition. It's one of the places where the layoffs in software and things like that are so rough, is that you're pushed into this. Now you need to go figure out what's next the second. You don't have time to think about it. Now you got to do it. You got to figure it out. I was very fortunate, being able to keep working for months after I knew that I was going to do this, and create a transition so that I could ease out of what I was doing and ease into this. And when the day came, that was my last day there, I was ready. I already knew what this was. I had this set up, but I could just keep going because I was already doing it some. It was a really nice transition. Having it forced on you is rough. But even in those cases, it's always sort of having in your head, it's like, okay, if I wasn't doing this, what would I do? There were times before I thought about software. It's like, what would I do if I left the company? Oh man, maybe I just go write apps. That's not retiring. That's just quitting. Doing the same thing. You haven't stopped doing anything. Now, to be fair, I do still write some apps. I have an app that I wrote for Songwriters that helps track all the songs and recordings we have and all the little bits of data we need to have around them for the ISRC codes and the ISWC numbers and the co-writers and what's the current state of the split agreements and all those different things that I just need to do. I like having the stuff in one place. So I wrote an app that does it. And so
And you can plug that app.
Well, I haven't shipped it yet. And the reason I haven't shipped it is the moment I ship it, I'm in software again and I have to support it. Right now, it's a thing that I use and a few friends use. I've been doing this on the side for a couple of years now, and it does a lot. And it's fun. And it's, it syncs all the data back and forth from Mac and iOS. And, I can have all these things all the different places. But the reason I do it is because I actually need it. Whenever I go to release a song, I have to go to a bunch of different places. I need to register with my PRO. I need to go to CD Baby when I go and upload it, and they're going to ask these set of questions, and then this other thing's going to ask this other set of questions. And if I have to keep jumping around to there's a spreadsheet there and there's a doc there, and then there's Logic has this stuff, it takes me forever to find this stuff. But if I have one place where I know it always is, then I can do that. I guess you don't stop being what you've been when you shift that, but it's about what the focus is. And it's weird that the software project is the hobby now and the music is the day job. And I love that. I mean, that is just so delightful every day that I come over to this room and sit down here and go, okay, what's today? And some days I'm doing a co-write and we're meeting at 9 a.m. here because 9 a.m. here is 5 p.m. in the UK. And so everybody who was working all day at their day job, they get home and they're like, okay, I'm ready to write and do some music. And I'm up, I've just had my coffee and I'm ready to do some music too. And it's actually an amazingly useful thing to work with folks in Europe just because of the way the time schedule works. When they're home from their day job and ready to do this, I am ready to go as well. Then they go to bed and I keep going for a little while longer. And when they get up, I've got a new mix or a new track or a new whatever. And then we just sort of, can repeat it when they get home again. And that works really well. I have not a ton of people in the US time zone that I work with in the same way. And I want to work on that too. But it might be harder if they're like, because I don't do this as well in the middle of the night. Or, if I had to meet up, start meeting a bunch of people at 8 p.m. to do this stuff, I'd probably be like, what?
Right.
But it works great with all the folks in Europe and the UK. And I really like doing that. So it's just a great way to have each day go. And then any day where I don't have those things scheduled, I've got my own stuff to work on or work on some other mixes or other songs or other tracks or whatever. And I can play a guitar part or a keyboard part or go add drums to it or bass, sing backing vocals and do all the production-y parts. There's just so much variety in all of it. You finish the song and you're on to the next one and off you go. Then I can create a new record in my little app and update all my metadata.
Oh, yes. The metadata. By the way, I want to test that app. That would be incredibly helpful for those who have listened to all of these wonderful stories. What is your advice if they're wanting to dip their toe in and maybe not sure if they should do that?
I would say start doing it. The doing it is where the joy is. There is always so much to learn. One of the things I thought as I was finishing software is if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be recording myself, mixing myself, mastering myself, producing myself, and playing guitar, drums, bass, singing, and keyboards and things like that. Now, I'm not great at all of those things, but each one of those things is a lifetime opportunity of learning and growing. And I have a lot of them, which means there's no waiting to start. Every moment that you're playing an instrument or just trying something in Logic or in any other tool, you're doing it. But it's not a matter of, I would love to, eventually be able to go and do this. It's like, start doing it. And then an opportunity may come, which may be one you choose, which is wonderful. Maybe one you don't choose. But if you've already started, it's the next step, right? And that to me is always easier than that first step. The first step in music can be easy if you don't think of it as a first step, right? It's just, I like playing guitar, or I want to learn to play ukulele, or I want to sing more, or whatever. Then start doing that. It's amazing how great all of the technology and the instruments are these days at even the lowest price points. I have a Squire guitar that I bought as an office guitar, just to have one in my office during long builds or something like that. And I was like, it's $200. Actually, maybe $150. And I took it in thinking, if someone steals this guitar from my office, whatever. No one ever did. When I was done with that job, I changed the pickups and I changed the strings on it so they're Nashville tuning. And now it is a fantastic guitar for that. And so now, what is still a less than $200 guitar plays great. I mean, it's great. I wouldn't throw away some of my other guitars for it necessarily, but I don't have to. All of that time when I was sitting at my desk and waiting for builds to happen or whatever, I could just sort of play guitar. And nobody else had to hear me. All of that was potentially the moment where you figure out some chord progression. You're like, oh, wait, this is a song. Ooh, what is this? You never know when those little moments of inspiration are going to happen. And so it's just doing it, start, and then look for those moments of inspiration because they'll start happening. The funny thing I've sort of figured out, or I think I figured out about inspiration, is that when it comes, you need to be open to it, right? You need to be ready to listen and you need to do something about it because if you don't, it'll stop coming. And that's actually the theme of my second album. Half the songs on the album are about that. And the other half are songs related to what the first songs were about. For me, it's 3 a.m. when some idea pops in my head. And I'm like, oh, that's actually a pretty good idea. Okay. And then I keep sort of processing in my head. And at some point, I'm like, okay, I need to write this down. My phone is next to the bed. And if I got some line or a phrase or a verse or whatever, I can pretty easily go over. It's in dark mode. I can go type the thing in and then go back to bed because I did something about that. And the next day I can go, okay, was that any good or was that terrible? But those moments come at the point when you're not thinking about it. They come at some moment where you've got something else in your head. So it might be, for me, it's 3 a.m, but for someone who's working in software, it might be in the middle of some meeting where they're talking about whether we're going to ship this thing or not, or in some design review where because your brain is focusing on this very different thing, that moment about that song or that lyric has a chance to go, oh, by the way, this, like that part of the brain that processes when it's not being focused on, which is what inspiration actually is. It's little bits of your brain that you're waking up. If you start, you're basically just developing those elements and they will start talking to you. If you wait for the perfect moment for that to happen, you're losing that time on developing it. So the big thing is start doing it. And I think the second thing is make sure you keep enjoying it. Don't make it the part of the thing that you hate where it becomes a job that's just miserable. For all of us, there's something we're like, I don't like doing that part of it. But there needs to be enough of the fun part. I did write an article once called Oh Cool Moments. It was for software, but I think the same thing applies to music. The thing that actually drives software engineers isn't the paychecks. They're nice, but it's not enough. It's not the team things. It's not some big challenge. It's those little moments when you're writing something and it works for the first time. And you're like, oh, cool. That worked. Neat. And that little bit of joy should power you through to the next one of those little bits of joy. A real burnout happens when the time between all those oh cool moments is too long. So if some process is broken, right, it just takes forever to get to the point where you can have that next little win, right? It's just a little moment of, hey, that thing I thought might work did work. And then you go to the next thing, it's like, that's broken, that's not working, and that crashed, why is this thing not, where is this bug? And then you find you're like, there it is. And that little moment of joy is like, okay, phew, something good. And I get those now. I realize I thought it was a software thing. If you do get those moments, you will find a way to keep going, right? There's that little bit of optimism that there is that next one. In music, there totally is that. There's plenty of times either there's some weird sound I'm trying to get rid of, or I'm trying to figure out what is the solo here, or what is this melody, or what does that lyric need to be? And a lot of the times it's like, not there yet. But when it comes, it is that same sort of oh cool moment. And it does just sort of keep you going. And the thing I love about music is they happen more often. And when they happen, they're just absolutely fantastic. Look for those oh cool moments and set yourself up to be able to get them more often.
I love that advice so much. And I really do see that because I do have those oh cool moments in technology. But yeah, there's a lot more of them in the studio because there's a lot less phone calls and emails and text messages about this thing's broken. It can happen in the studio, but it usually isn't remotely the same.
Yeah. If you start doing a lot of collaborative stuff with a lot of people, it's different if you're a professional recording engineer or a mixer. We'll have a lot of people coming back and saying things like what we used to call rock fetching exercises. And that's where someone says, get me a rock. You go get them a rock. You bring it to them. And they say, no, not that. It's like, what rock? And they're like, no, a different rock. You've not given me enough information to be able to do anything with this. And there's an awful lot of creative folks who they're like, I don't know what the answer is. I'm pretty sure that's not it. So go give me another answer. And those are tough because they're just saying no, but they're not giving you a hint to yes. So, that certainly happens in music in a lot of places. But the thing that's great about being your own songwriter, your own producer, your own guitar player, your own whatever, is that it's just you that you need to answer to. And that's why it's so important to love what you're creating. You only need to satisfy yourself. If you love it, then you're there. If other people don't love it, you can hear their feedback and maybe useful and make it better. I'll go and try that. And sometimes you're like, I do it. And I'm like, nope, didn't make it better. And sometimes it's like, oh yeah, that definitely made it. But that was my choice, right? To go and give that a shot. And it was my sort of opportunity to answer, is that better or not? And that I think is one of the sort of the keys to happiness in this, or probably any business, is that a little bit of empowerment to be able to say, like, what are we doing today? And as you're doing it, is this right? Or do I think I can do better? So with that, even when you're not doing well, you know it. You don't know what the answer is yet, but you know the answer's out there somewhere, right? And it gets a little frustrating, but now I sort of sit back and go, wait a minute, look at what you're doing. You're writing a song, and it's just me. Look what I get to do. And it's great. And so I love that element of it. So even when it's hard, at least it's hard doing this. And I sort of sit back and go, look what I get to do. It's really nice.
Exactly.
And I'm in a great place right now where I don't have record labels coming yelling at me, looking for my next big hit. I'll probably never get there, which is fine. But I've got some set of monthly listeners who like what I do. And so they come back and listen to it. And I get to keep doing this. And so this is the sort of great moment where it's all up to me. And there may be some point where that stops being the case. Maybe things will be different then. But right now it's here, and I just love enjoying this. And I think for people who want to take that leap, then start doing it, because enjoy these moments. And you may not need anything more than that.
That's such powerful perspective. I think that's a great way to wrap up what we're doing. So where can everybody follow you online and keep up with what you're doing and be ready for your next album?
My next album. And a couple more singles before then, too. So AudioGust, AudioGust. Think of singing as a gust of audio. So AudioGust.com is my website. I am on all of the streaming services as AudioGust. I am at AudioGust Music on Instagram and Threads. You can meet me at any of those places. Yeah, and there's, I've got Bandcamp and all the different things. But I think AudioGust.com is sort of the center point from which you can find where the newest songs are and what's coming next.
And we will have everything in the show notes so that everybody can keep up to date. Thank you so much, Chris. This was so great to talk.
This is great. I love what you're doing with this show. I think it's just such a useful thing. And so, such an empowering thing for folks to think about, oh, wait, I can do this. It's all within us to go and do it. And, it's if you don't need to make it something, is when it becomes something.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There is so much wisdom packed into this conversation with Chris, from building a second career around joy, to making space for inspiration, to remembering that done is better than perfect. I especially loved how he described Hooky anthems for disenchanted optimists, because doesn't that describe so many of us in our second verse? Still hopeful, but grounded. Still dreaming, but doing the work. And as a web developer and music producer, the connection between technology and music and those who work in both fields is very striking to me. I wonder, what other jobs and industries you may have found connected well with music? Maybe you have a great story you can share at secondversepod.com/share your story. You can even leave an audio message, and you might just hear your own voice on a future episode. Now, your artist action step for this week. Don't chase perfection, chase progress. Whether you're sitting on half-finished demos, unsure if your work is good enough, or still defining your sound, keep moving, keep writing, keep shipping. And if you're stuck on how to present yourself online or make your music findable and professional, I'd love to help at attitudecreativity.com. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's ready to write their next chapter. And now, stick around to have a listen to Here We Go Again by AudioGust.
Good morning, my friend. There's something in the air I hear while lying in my bed. My eyes aren't even open yet, but I am not asleep, and the cogwheels are clicking in my head. Good morning again. The temperature is rising as the coffee's kicking in. Or maybe it's the Adderall. When I open up my notebook, words and phrases start to gel and we begin. It starts just like a premonition. Then I sit back and try to listen. Here we go again. Here we go again. Open up my mind and let me in. Here we go again. Don't end it yet. It might get intense. Nevertheless. Here we go again. Just let it end. Keep going, my friend, and I will try to keep up as you enumerate the strands and piece together stories that you clearly comprehend, and I might just pretend to understand. I'm grateful, I am, when you drop by to visit, even when it's 3 a.m. You whisper rhyming secrets, then I race to not forget them, while I fear your visitations will someday end. It starts just like a premonition, then I sit back